This is the Yongnuo 11mm f1.8 compact ultra wide-angle prime lens for Sony APS-C cameras. It only costs $260 and has a focal length equivalent to 16.5mm on a full frame, making it ideal for vlogging, landscapes and cityscapes. It's made of metal, is super compact, has an aperture ring and has a remote control function to wirelessly change settings such as aperture, focus and create two custom focus points for focus pulling shots. For the last 2 weeks, I've been testing this lens with my Sony ZV-E10, including autofocus performance, image quality, vlogging and many other things, and today I would like to share with you what I think about it. Also, the entire talking head part for this video will be filmed with the Sony ZV-E10 and the Yongnuo 11mm f1.8. With that said, let's start. The build quality is fantastic, especially considering the price. The entire lens is made of metal, including the lens mount, but not the lens hood. It has a rubber gasket for weather sealing. It's really compact at only 66mm by 69mm. It weighs only 273 grams. It has a very smooth focus ring, an autofocus manual focus switch, a custom function button, a 58mm filter thread, a USB-C port for firmware upgrades, and an incredibly smooth aperture ring with an on-off click function that surprisingly performs almost as smoothly as my Sony 20mm f1.8. This actually really surprised me because usually aperture rings on cheap lenses make squeaky noises or something like that, but the Yongnuo 11mm f1.8 is almost as good as my Sony 20mm f1.8. However, when the lens is mounted on the camera and you try to change the aperture, regardless if it's set to click on or click off, it makes weird noises from the inside of the lens. I guess from the aperture blades moving or something like that. I haven't heard anything like this in the past, but there are some weird noises. Here's an example to demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about. Another cool feature of this lens is this wireless remote control, which allows you to wirelessly connect to it and change things like aperture, focus, and create two custom focus points for focus pulling shots. It has a USB-C port for charging and firmware upgrades, and it's relatively easy to connect to the lens. All you have to do is power it on, switch the autofocus manual focus switch on the lens to 1, press and hold the function button for a few seconds, turn on the camera until the aperture switches to f8, hold the wheel dial on the remote for 2 seconds, and you're done. Now you can press the wheel dial once to change the aperture. Press it again to control the focus. Just make sure the camera is set to manual focus mode. In this section, you can also create A/B focus points. To do that, adjust the starting focus point, then press and hold the left top button to lock it. You'll see A appear on the screen. Next, adjust the end focus point, and this time press and hold the top right button until you see B appear on the screen. Now press the wheel dial again. You should see SP appear on the screen, which stands for speed. This section allows you to control the focus transition speed between point A and point B. Turn the dial all the way to the left for the slowest speed and all the way to the right for the fastest speed. You can now press the A and B buttons to move between the focus points. So let me give you a quick demonstration of how this wireless remote works in real-world scenarios. First of all, I can control the aperture, as you can see, right? I'm gonna leave it at f1.8. Let's press the dial once again. Now I can control the focus, but I have to switch the focus mode on the camera first to manual focus. And now with the wheel dial here, I can control the focus of the lens. Let me try to do it as slow as possible so you can see how smoothly it works. It looks fairly smooth on the little display. Okay, now let's create two focus points. The first one is going to be my face. Let's start here. So now I think I am in focus. Let's hold the left top button to lock it. And now let's focus on the background. Hold the top right button to lock the focus. And now it says A and B. Now I can press this dial again until I see SP. Let's change the speed to the slowest. Click A and B. A and B. Kind of wish it was a bit slower, to be honest. It would have looked much better in my opinion. Now let's go all the way up, and this is the fastest speed. 1, 2, super snappy and fast. I don't know if I'll ever use something like this, but it's pretty cool to control the aperture and focus wirelessly in setting the custom focus points, and it's only $20 extra. Moving on to autofocus, I ran a few tests and found that for the most part this lens performed wonderfully, with the exception of a few minor cases where it would hunt before grabbing focus, especially when shooting in contrasty scenes. However, for the most part it was almost as reliable as my native Sony lenses. In terms of focus spreading, this lens doesn't really perform the best. It's quite noticeable when focusing from close to infinity, so if you frequently do focus pulling / stacking shots, this might not be the best choice. Moving on, the minimum focus distance is only 15 centimeters. However, the results are a bit soft, especially when shooting wide open. This is pretty much the case with all cheap lenses. As soon as you bring something close to them, the image becomes really soft. As for the motor noise, when autofocusing, this lens doesn't have any noise at all. You can even use the built-in microphones on the camera and you won't hear anything because it's pretty much dead silent. Now let's do a vlogging test. This is how it looks like without using the active stabilization on my Sony ZV-E10. The focal length is roughly equivalent to 16.5 millimeters, which is more than enough in my opinion for vlogging. The camera is pretty close to me. It's about 30 to 25 centimeters away from my face, and I'm holding the camera with just my hands, no tripod or anything like that. Now here is how it looks like with active stabilization enabled on the ZV-E10. This is now about 23 millimeters, definitely much tighter than before. But if you have one of the newer Sony APS-C cameras like the FX30 or the A6700, you'll have better results because I think they have like a 1.2 crop instead of 1.4. Now, just for the fun of it, here's how it looks like with my Sony ZV-E1, which is a full frame camera. And this is without using the active stabilization, just the IBIS enabled, and that's it. You can definitely see vignetting all over the place, but if I'm going to crop about, let's say like 1.2 here, the vignetting is pretty much gone. At least I don't really see it on the screen. And it's still wide enough for vlogging. And now I have enabled active stabilization without using clear image zoom. You can still see some vignetting around, but again, if I'm going to crop to about 1.1, something like this, the vignetting is pretty much gone and it's still wide enough for vlogging. So if you want a cheap compact lens for your Sony full frame camera, then this might be a great choice. And just for the fun of it, let's also try using dynamic stabilization. I don't see any vignetting and the footage should be really stable. It's still wide enough for vlogging. Camera is about like 25 centimeters away from me and I'm holding the camera in my hand, of course. No tripod extensions or anything like that. In terms of optical performance, firstly, this lens has noticeable barrel distortion, which is expected for a wide-angle lens. I'm not sure how it compares to others on the market, but overall, it's fairly noticeable, especially in shots with straight lines. Moving on, at f1.8, it's sharp in the center, a bit soft in the corners, with noticeable vignetting and significant chromatic aberration issues in the corners. Stopping down to f2.8 improves overall sharpness and nearly eliminates vignetting, but some chromatic aberration still persists in the corners. By f4, the image is essentially tack sharp across the entire frame with no visible vignetting, but still with some chromatic aberration issues in the corners. Overall, I think this lens is relatively sharp and it produces fantastic results for a wide-angle lens. It also doesn't have any major color casting. It feels and looks really neutral. However, I don't really like the chromatic aberration issues. It reminds me of cheap Viltrox lenses lenses. I tried to even stop down the lens to f9, but I still saw some chromatic aberration even at f9. To summarize, this lens is definitely worth it if you're looking for something cheap that can do vlogging, cityscapes, landscapes with your APS-C Sony camera. It has fantastic build quality, great autofocus performance, decent image quality if you can live with the chromatic aberration issues that I've mentioned, and it's not too expensive, only $260. And also if you pay extra $20, it comes with this remote control function, which allows you to control the aperture, focus, and set custom points for focus pulling shots. Anyhow, I'm going to leave a link for this lens down below, and I guess I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.